Hello, One Piece TCG fans, enthusiasts, gamers, and here's our fifth video of the week, wrapping up release week. So before I make this video, just want to let you guys know that the following weeks will not be as content heavy. I really wanted to make this week special as the game had just come out. I want to give you guys the tools to do excellent in all your locals and to just start dominating, getting your hands on the game and getting some ideas. Once I give you guys these lists, these deck profiles, these videos, you can then start going out, making your own changes, making your deck more personalized, and making the game more you. But hopefully with these deck profiles, these commentary videos, you guys are learning and enjoying the game as much as I am. So for our last video of the week, I had to finish it with my boy, the one and only Donquixote Doflamingo. So if you watch the tier list video, you know that Andrew, myself, and a bunch of other friends, we love this leader. He's so unbelievably cool. The combos that you can do with this deck and the way that you have to play it plays very differently than the other decks, and that's very cool. I think my most favorite, or my favorite aspect of the deck is the fact that once you play a Perona and you start searching the top 5, well, you don't search, but like you stack the top 5, you can start planning out 2, 3, 4 turns ahead, and you know what's going to happen in the game if you're trying to read the game state correctly. And by doing so, you actually feel like Doflamingo. Like when you hit them with the teach on the effect, like they're like, damn, you sacked me. It's like, no, man, I planned this 2 turns ahead. Like I'm just puppeteering you. I am the puppet master, and I'm just pulling you along by the strings. And I think that's so cool and so interesting. So without further ado, let's get to the deck list. Put Doflamingo over there to the side. I mean, and just a comment, all the alt-art leaders, they did such a wonderful job. Excellent job, Bandai. But with the 1-drops, we have Law from the structure deck. Like I said in my last video, there's no way we don't fit these guys into almost every deck, especially in a deck that plays Gecko Moria and recurability. The fact that we can drop this as a 1-drop blocker, we can recycle it with the Morias, lets us do a lot of control. In a deck where we can get to 5 on board very easily, these 1-drop blockers just kind of disappear, block, don't block, and then they can get recycled whenever I want. They can be the 5th card on board, making sure that 1 attack always gets blocked, and then I can just play a card on the following turn. They're absolutely good. He is a 7 Warlords of the Sea, so it can be summoned by Flamingo, but it probably shouldn't. But yeah, 1-drop blockers, they're just really, really good. You can pocket them forever. You can go ahead and wait. You can recycle them. One of the best cards in the game. There's a reason that they made this guy's a prize card in future events. And then for our other 1-drop, this card is so good. Perona. Perona feels amazing. Once you put like Perona on 1, it feels like you're in such a winning position, right? If you think about it, let's say you're going first, you're on the play, you go Perona on 1, you stack the top of the deck. You can put, I don't know, a Boa Hancock. You don't have to put anything that's really impactful. You can put a Teach, a Boa, the Teach is expecting them to make a play. But like a Boa would be something very natural, or even a Mihawk. Then on your following turn, you attach to swing for 7, trigger effect, summon a 5k to the board on turn 3, while also dealing damage. Like that's insane amount of early pressure. And if you go second, you already start to see what they have. You can go Law Perona, which a lot of people have opened up to me, opened against me. And this combo as a start is really, really strong because not only sets up the play, you get information from their board, and then you obviously stack the game for the next 3 to 4 turns. Super duper good. The only issue is you gotta keep up with what's on the top of your deck. Not only do you have to read the game state, prepare ahead of time, you also have to remember, oh, this is the 4th card there, or the 5th card. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it down, my goodness, she feels like an amazing, amazing card. It's a 1k counter, 2k attack. Overall, very solid card. And that kind of rounds it up for the for the 1-drops. This deck is really interesting. It's very 4 heavy, as you're going to see in a little bit. For our 2-drops, we play 4 of the Alvida. It's just a 2k counter. The effect is sometimes good, but I find it very difficult to achieve. Pitching a card from hand to bounce something that's 3 or lower usually doesn't happen, and you have to have a Dawn under it. So putting 1 Dawn on this makes it a 4. You're probably going to have to put 2 to really make it efficient, which is kind of an issue. And then you want to have to pitch a card from hand. So it's a lot of investment for very little payout. Very rarely do I use its effect. I mostly use it as a 2k counter, as I try to stack the deck with as many 2k counters, because my idea is I'm going to defend as much as possible, play for the board, because my deck does a great job at playing for the board using Flamingo's effect, and then winning over the course of literally like 25 minutes. It's a very slow deck, very, very grindy. You can't be in the mindset of just immediately trying to storm your opponent. It's very difficult to achieve that, and you have to play it with that mentality. Alvida, though, pitching a card from hand doesn't feel too terrible because his deck does have Boa Hancock, Love Beam, and other forms of draw power that you can go ahead and facilitate to recycle your hand. But more often than not, If you're not dumping the non-combo powered big heavy cards, you're probably not using this card. Very rarely does she get summoned unless it's versus red or aggro law. And then maybe you can dump a Mihawk from your hand to then get value off of something like a chopper. I don't know. Something that has no combo power preferably. But once again, very, very difficult to use. 2k counter. I just don't want you guys to get baited on an effect. And then for our 3-drops, again, limited. Our 3-drops, we have Mr. Boncré. This card is a 2k counter, but he's a little bit better than Alvida. So with Mr. Boncré, besides being a 2k counter, he is a 4k3. And so with 1 Dawn, when this card attacks, when attacking, you can look at the top of your deck to go ahead and add a Baroque Work event card, I believe. I don't think it's a card per se. It's an event card. Yes, an event card, and add it to my hand. So this will add specifically Desert Spada and Stobbles. So my idea with Mr. Boncré is that, like, if the top of my deck is not great and I have already like Perona'd or Flamingo to search the top 5, and I'm not a fan of like what I'm looking at, once I've already gotten the 2 cards that are really good at the top 5, Boncré can then attack, go ahead and recycle with the top of my deck, and then I can play Perona after to then fix what's going on. So this is kind of like a recycler of the top of the deck. Not something you always want to do. I believe this card is Baroque Work, so you cannot use Flamingo's effect with it. But once again, 2k counter, and he can swing for 5 with just 1 Dawn investment, while also searching one of the most powerful cards in your deck in terms of Desert Spada. Big fan of Mr. Boncré. And then maybe soon enough, we'll get a Baroque Work deck in the mix. And for our last 3-drop, we have one of the best cards in the deck, Flamingo himself. So this is a 3-drop blocker 4k Flamingo that also stacks the top of the deck. Again, with 1 Dawn, this card can go sideways. It still has combo power. It searches and excavates. It does the Perona effect while having the blocker stat line. And this card can be summoned off the top of the deck. It just fits all the key points that the deck wants to do. If it was just a little bit better statted, this card would be absolutely bananas. But at a 3-drop, for all of this value, I think it's very well statted. So, definite 4 of. And now for our assault of how many 4s we play. We play a very weird little lineup, which I'm trying out, but I'm not exactly sure if this is correct. We play 3 Teach and 1 Jinbei. Jinbei is bizarre. And maybe I'm going to take a second here to talk about Jinbei and trigger cards in general. So I've seen a lot of deck lists for Flamingo, and for whatever reason, I mean, respectfully, they play a lot of cards with trigger in them, and it's hard not to. When I first made a Flamingo list, I thought to myself, man, this Bartholomew from the structure deck seems excellent in my deck. It comes out of life, it stacks the top of my deck, it does it all. And then I played it, and I noticed, well, my opponent should never be attacking my life. My board, because of Flamingo's effect, I'm going to be creating boards in sideways positions. I'm going to be going wide on the board. If they ever hit my life and don't deal with my board, they're just going to end up losing the game. So there's no shot that they should be hitting life if you're playing correctly. So these cards with trigger are super duper bait. The Boa Hancocks, the Bartholomew Kumas, the Jinbeis, any of the trigger spells in life or trigger characters, they just lose value in this deck. If you're playing Crocodile or any other blue leader, for sure, go out of your way to play those cards. They're probably pretty solid. In this deck specifically, though, I feel like they're bait. With that being said, I mean, this guy can sometimes come in a very sacky spot, but I doubt it. The most important reason that he's in the deck is that he deals with pesky cards like Nico Robin and Okiku, and make sure that they're gone for good. Sometimes teaching them, although yes, this is a huge tempo swinger, you can only teach them so much before that card comes down and finally connects with you. You have to have a string of teaches, and that's really tough. And the other issue with Jinbei is the fact that he's not a 7 Great Warlords of the Sea, or this specific card of Jinbei is not a 7 Great Warlords of the Sea. So you can't really use it in combination with your hero. You also don't have combo power. Its stat line is very terrible. Usually trigger cards end up getting like really bad stat lines with a really good effect and then no combo. Or at least that's what they did with this Jinbei. So no combo, 2k, 4-drop, but it bottom decks. And bottom decking is very, very strong because Nico Robin gone, Okiku gone, Zoro gone will allow us a little bit more breathing room as opposed to them being able to recycle them from hand, from trash, and then it becomes a little bit more difficult to deal with. Blackbeard, on the other hand, has combo power, is a 7 Great Warlords of the Sea, has a great stat line. He's pretty darn good. I ain't gonna lie. If you're in an aggro deck and you get teached over and over and over again, it's gonna feel bad. You're gonna start really hating this card because he's just oppressive. He's just like, go back to your hand, back to your hand, back to your hand. And by going back to hand, it slows you down 1 turn. Obviously, you don't want to bounce Zoros or Rushers, but by bouncing Choppers to go for lethal or to go for pushes, bouncing Nikos or Okikus to make sure that they have to wait another another separate turn if they want to go ahead and deploy it and then do it. Feels very, very strong. While also putting 1 Dawn on this and being an absolute threat makes it so this card is really, really good. Once this guy comes down and bounces, even though he comes sideways because of your leader, you're absolutely fine for him going to the trash because Gecko Moria will then bring him back to your hand and you can have him saved up for later. An amazing, amazing card. And as a blue enjoyer, he's one of my favorite cards in the game. And then when I'm playing against blue, I hate this guy. So the cycle goes back and forth. So we have the little bouncy bounce package in our 4. We also have our 2K. Rounding up our 2Ks, now we have 12 2Ks in the deck in terms of Alvida, Boncray, and now Mihawk. Mihawk has a really good effect because, and a great stat line. He's a 4/5 with an effect that if you put one Dawn under him, now he's 6K, a real number. You can go ahead and draw 2, discard 2, which sometimes versus aggro matchups is very, very important because we do end up just having too many dead cards in our hand, and we can finally cycle into our better, more lower ranged cards and be able to win the game. Once again, he is a 7 Great Warlords of the Sea, Flamingo, Moria, Mamma Mia. I think we're starting to get the picture here. And then Gecko Moria, one of the most unbalanced cards in the game. Just one little tidbit that I want to say about him. Although the Perona is not a Great Warlord of the Sea, she is a Thriller Bark Pirate card, so therefore Gecko Moria, funnily enough, can also pick her up if you kind of want to recycle the top of your deck once again. So it's just a bunch of little cute interactions that the deck has. It's things that you have to keep track of, while also keeping track of the top of your deck, while also keeping track of how much combo power and how much your opponent can come at you with. It's just a little bit. So this deck, I certainly will say this deck rewards many games. I think you're going to have to put at least 20 games into this deck before you start feeling comfortable enough to play it in tournament. And our last 4-drop, I do play 4 of Boa Hancock. She is great. Woo! Went off the screen there for a little bit. She is a 4 for 5. She is a blocker with a real number, and she also has a really good effect on block if I'm less than 4 cards in hand, draw a card, or I'm at 4, or on swing 4 cards. So again, this deck wants to drop your hand as much as possible. I'm defending from hand as much as possible, getting to that sweet spot at 4, and then Boa Hancock, Love Beam are then just pumping it up. Blocking with Boa, defending with Boa to draw a card, and then on my turn, swinging with Boa to draw another card to recycle my hand and just keep up the pressure. That's exactly what you want to do with these sort of cards and make sure that you're at a very stable hand total. This deck won't ever have you at 10, but it most certainly will have anywhere between 4 to 7 within like a good range every single turn. And that rounds up our 4-drops, which is, ain't gonna lie, it's a ton. We have 8 and 8. So we have 16 4-drops. That means that our Flamingo is more certainly always going to hit when we Perona. And even if you're going blind, you have a really high chance of hitting, but very rarely does the game state call for that. And for our only 2 5-drops, we're playing 2 Virgo. Now I know, this guy's a vanilla. This guy's not a 7 Great Warlords of the Sea. What is this guy? Well, let me tell you what he is. He's a 5-drop 7K. And you're going to tell me, well, 5-drop 7K, who cares, Yadam? Like, why do I play this card in my deck? Unfortunately, our deck has a very bad matchup versus green. Very bad. The 8-drop Kid kind of destroys us entirely and becomes very difficult to deal with us. Our cards usually end up in the 5 to 4 range. This whole little section here is just very tiny. It's very difficult for us to efficiently put Dawn on our cards and contest that 8-drop. So how do we do it? We have to use this guy. This guy, in matchups where this card, where you're not playing as green and you don't need to worry about the 8-drop Kid, maybe you can even Alvida this card away. This card is pretty useless in those matchups. He's just 1K combo. He is specifically here for green, and he exists to contest the 8-drop Kid with 1 Dawn. That's his whole purpose in life. It's unfortunate, but he is what he is. We don't really have better options. We don't want to spend like 7 Dawn on like a 9K vanilla. That's way too much like expended. 5 for 7 feels just okay enough that we can get away with it. And he is just an unfortunate circumstance of the meta. Hopefully in the future we get better options, but for now, this is where we're at with this 8-drop Kid. And then continuing our big boys, we have Flamingo himself at 3. Again, pound for pound, one of the best tempo cards in the entire game. 777. That's the lucky number, baby. You know what I'm saying? But no, he is really good, really difficult to deal with. If you're ever able to stick, there are some board states like you don't want to just drop him down. I mean, if you can drop him on a curve, it's really good. And certain board states just call for you to play this card. This card will then allow you to go for board and then eventually go for game. Very easy to defend in this deck too. With all the combo power that you have, they can barely ever clear this card off the board. Purple has an impossible time taking off 7 drops, as we know, so Flamingo definitely helps in the purple matchup. These big boys really do aid, and going wide early and then finishing off with the big boys late is certainly how we want to go ahead and do it in this matchup. Kind of push these guys off the table. And then rounding off our top end, we have 2 Mihawks. I wish I could fit more, but unfortunately, if we go too heavy on the top end, then we lose to red, like to aggro matchups. If we go too light on the top end, we lose to the green matchup. So it becomes very difficult. It's a balancing act. And that's why, again, although this is one of my favorite decks, it's a very pet deck, if you will. It was very difficult to play in a tournament setting because without sideboard, we cannot make a well-rounded deck that can then go either way. We have to kind of make sure that we deal for everything, and in a best of one scenario, it certainly can get a little frustrating if you tech for aggro and you play only green or only purple. So I tried to give you a little mid-rangey blue deck that can really handle a little bit of everything that comes your way. But once again, it's not as easy as just piloting these other decks. You kind of have to put a lot of thought process that other decks don't really have to think about in terms of looking at the top of your deck. And for our last cards, we have the event cards. 4 of Desert Spadas, because we always want to know what's on top of our deck. We have the Flamingos, we have the Peronas, but we have to max out on every single card that looks at the top of our deck because we always want to know what's going on up there. This is searchable by Bond Clay. It is a 2k counter for 1. It's actually a really excellent card. I undervalued this card heavily when I saw the set. I didn't think it would really do much, but the more and more I play this, the more I really enjoy this card. 2 Love Beams. It pains me to say it, but keeping 2 up in this deck is very hard. As much as I love Beam, there's no way we can really keep up with as many with 2k, like with keeping up 2 and also keeping a board and keeping up tempo. So very rarely do we have enough to do this, and most likely this is a more late game card to really defend our bigger cards and eventually drawing cards and out comboing our opponent while also keeping board advantage. And for the last card, Sobbles. 1 of Sobbles, it's still a great card. 4 to move a 7 is pretty solid. Its effect in life is really strong, and it's also searchable by Bond Clay. So my last little tidbit of information I'm going to give you guys here. I'm going to give you guys a rule of thumb. 1, handle the board. 2, handle the threats that your opponent can come at you. And 3, then go for life. Remember that when going for life, even though it feels good, like you're hitting them, they're getting closer and closer to losing. Every single hit is about 17% of their total health. But it's also a draw. In a game with very little draw power, except for blue, we have a little bit of draw. With very little draw power, each draw means something heavily and heavy. And if you're starting to see that your opponent isn't comboing, you can start kind of guessing what's in their hand. You can start seeing them, well, they didn't defend a 6. Well, they defend a 5. And then just start going lower, making sure that you always 5-5-5-ing them, forcing interaction, trying to guess what's in their hand. And once they're out of possible options, you go for the life very slowly. Keep it safe. It's a slow game. You have a best of 1. Don't make it so that you lose because you got a little too greedy. Don't say I have to win this turn, because maybe you don't. Maybe you can defend with some blockers, clear the board, and out combo them with your hand. So I hope that information really helps. I'm enjoying making this One Piece content. I'm glad that you guys are really enjoying it. If you guys would like to comment down below and let me know any type of videos, suggestions for future content that you would like, let me know. I really appreciate talking with you guys and making this content for you as we all get better and closer to finding the One Piece. See ya.